Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. Today we are going to be talking about Ogerpon-Hearthflame, basically the fire one, basically the powerhouse in the format right now, by far the most used and best Ogerpon I would go ahead and say. And basically it's just because you're able to be bulky, because you have the same stats as the other ones. You're able to be bulky, but you're also able to go on the offense immediately with that terrestrialization, and becoming not only pure fire type but also just getting that +1 attack boost is huge. It kind of allows you to get that best of both worlds, where you can be bulky and you can be offensive. So we'll go into that in a bit, but overall guys, you're looking at the same stuff the other Ogerpons have in your Ivy Cudgels. You're going to pick your grass move generally here because you tend to have more offensive of a mindset. You tend to go a little bit more, lean towards Woodhammer a little bit more. But stuff like Power Whip, Horn Leech, those are all still available for you guys. If you want to pick a different grass move, that's probably fine. Woodhammer is probably the easiest one to just kind of slap onto this piece, though. Once again, you still get Follow Me, and Follow Me is a broken move, guys. I love Follow Me on a team. I think it is massive for support. Anytime I look up at my opponent's team sheet and the Ogerpon doesn't have Follow Me, it's one less thing I have to consider every single turn. Right? Not saying that other moves are bad, but I'm just addicted to clicking Follow Me, and it is a broken move. You also get stuff, once again, like the Encores, like the Taunt, like the other Ogerpons. But because you tend to have a little bit more of the offensive mindset with the Fire Pawn, you actually end up seeing these guys run Swords Dance quite often. You also see Focus Energy from time to time as well. So those moves will sprinkle in on Ogerpon. I'll show them on some of the spreads, but we'll see pretty quickly that this third slot, the third move slot, is the one that's up in the air, right? Because you're going to go Ivy Cudgel, Woodhammer, Spiky Shield as the fourth move. And in this third slot, you can pretty much do whatever you want with. You can pretty much take any of these sets and basically say, I'm just going to switch this third move to one that fits my team, fits my play style, and you are not going to really be going wrong ever, right? Jumping straight off the bat, 252, 252, 4. I always like bringing this up, and I know it seems like it's a very lazy way of putting a set out there, but it is something to put out where, a lot of players, including myself, I do this all the time. I will spend hours just trying to fine-tune this right EV spread before I even play a Pokemon. Like, I'm putting this Pokemon on my team, and before I even figure out if it's the correct Pokemon, I'm spending like 2 hours building this beautiful EV spread. I have all the damage calcs laid out, and then it just turns out that it's not part of the team, or it shouldn't be on the team, right? So I think there's nothing wrong, especially early on, just grabbing a 252, 252 and seeing if this piece is necessarily correct, right? After that, you're more than welcome to have some fun with the spreads, but you can also just leave it. There's a lot of players that do just leave their spreads and say, I'm going to outplay people with my play, as opposed to worrying about the perfect spreads, because 252, 252, 4 is probably fine. The main thing I want to point out here is I did stick with Jolly, and that's also going to be brought up as the talking point later. But the concept of Jolly that you want with Ogerpon is you want that immediate ability to just say, I'm going to Terra Fire, I'm going to click Ivy Cudgel, and I'm removing something from the field. Whether that's a Landorus, whether that's an Urshifu, whatever you want to remove, if you're not resisting a Terra Fire Ivy Cudgel, you are probably dying. Unless you have like insane amounts of bulk, like a near bulkier piece. But generally speaking, a Terrafire Ivy Cudgel is removing things from the board. And in a format where you have a lot of the middle speed tiers, the Urshifus, the Landoruses, right? There's a lot of things sitting in, that 130 to, that 168 range. And because of that, being Jolly just basically allows you to get that off more often, where you don't care. You don't have to worry about a setup. You don't have to worry about speed control. You're just faster and you can kill things. And there is something to be said about that. And you'll see that here on this talking point spread. Some of these other numbers will make a little bit more sense as we go through the other two bulkier builds. However, the 156, this is the pretty much KO even the bulkier Landoruses that are running around right now. So you just Terra Fire, you drop an Ivy Cudgel, it's dead. The speed stat, I'm literally creeping Landorus by 1. You can probably go a little faster and not care about some of these defensive calcs, and go up so you can speed creep some of the other Ogerpons. Once again, just being faster, especially with the ability to get the +1 and take something out with an Ivy Cudgel, is incredibly strong. So I have to respect the fact that you can go Jolly. However, you get so much value out of being adamant, and this is where this bulky offensive build comes from, right? You get so much value out of being the adamant set that you're just able to take things down, and it's absolutely ridiculous, right? Once again, moves are going to stay the same, guys. This third slot, as I said earlier, it can be any of the support moves, pretty much anything you really want it to be. Once again, Focus Energy, Swords Dance, you're going to see them kind of staggered throughout, but overall, like I said, it's going to be either of them. You can put Follow Me here. I'm addicted to Follow Me. I just wanted to feature Focus Energy on one of these sets. You can probably run a few of these interchangeable in between the sets and going forward, right? But overall, right here, you're looking at a spread. 92 Adamant allows you to guarantee that if you Terra Fire, you are killing an Indeedee. And taking out Indeedee immediately is phenomenal, because generally speaking, Indeedee is going to want to click Follow Me, and they're going to want click Trick Room beside that. So now maybe you're going to pair this beside something that has Taunt, or beside something that can kill the Trick Room setter, right? So in certain instances, you know, you're going to Terra Fire, you're going to Cudgel, you're going to remove Indeedee from the board. You no longer have to care about it. And then your partner Pokemon is able to stop the other Trick Room from going up, maybe whether you're killing it, whether you're taunting it, regardless, it gives you that flexibility to remove the Indeedee from the board, and I think that is massive for a ton of teams, right? Just anytime you remove a Follow Me mod from the opponent, it's very, very good, especially in terms of like Psychic Terrain control as well. You get Indeedee out of the way, maybe you swap in your Rillaboom after, you're guaranteed to win the terrain. There's a lot to be said about that stat. So 92 is kind of the stat that I wanted to feature, because that's the stat that I kind of like sitting my Ogerpons at in certain builds, because it's like, okay, I just get to remove Indeedee now, and I don't really need more than that, right? Speed, I went 154. I figured I'd be faster than a decent chunk of things like this. The Adamant Urshifu sit at 149, and then there's a lot of things in that 149 to 152, 153 speed tier. This allows me to also be faster than the modest Landorus Incarnates, which, like I was saying earlier, anytime you can be faster than Landorus, click Terra Fire and kill it. Seems like a pretty good day in my book, right? So why would I not want to be in that scenario? Obviously, with the Adamant Ogerpon, I can't be faster than the Jolly Landoruses, so there's not too much I can do about that. But if they're there, they're there. 76-108, this is for Mystic Water Surging Strikes from Urshifu. Not really too relevant of a defensive calc, but once again, it's a benchmark I wanted to feature in this case because it also worked very nicely with the special defense. So the concept being 76-108, you're able to live the Adamant Urshifu Mystic Water Surging Strikes, and you just kind of get to sit there. I think you also live Terra Water Surging Strikes from a Jolly Urshifu. You can go more and live like the Adamant Terra Water ones, but you needed a lot for that. In fact, I think it would be better off if you just had the nature change and you ran like an impish Ogerpon-Fire. But I don't think you're allowed to slow Ogerpon down to take away those EVs in this format right now. Like I said, there's a lot of that middling speed tier. This is probably the lowest I would be willing to go on an Ogerpon right now, at least for comfort, without like insane amounts of speed control, right? So you're gonna live the Surging Strike, the Mystic Water Surging Strikes here. And then this 4476 is going to allow you to always live Specs Power Gem from Timid Fluttermane, which is like definitely serviceable. Now you can probably go a little bit bulkier. Not too many Fluttermanes are even running Specs right now, but the ones that are tend to be either timid and pretty offensive, or modest and a little bit bulkier with less special attack. So you have a good chance of living those ones as well. So just being able to live that, and that's a huge survival in front of a Fluttermane, because this is a piece you want to be using to deal with Fluttermane, right? You resist a Moonblast and Icy Wind is neutral. You are sitting in front of Fluttermane very, very well, thus making it, since Fluttermane the best Pokemon in the format, Ogerpon, you know what, really appreciates having that benefit as well. So that's kind of the benchmarks here. Once again, feel free to kind of merge it with this Grassy Glide setup variant. Once again, you can definitely just run Grassy Glide setup on this bulky offense one, and you're totally fine as well. We actually have the same attack stat. Here I kind of prioritize surviving Dragonite Shenpao stuff. So Terra normal E-Speed from Dragonite will not be removing this Ogerpon from the field. If there's a Shenpao on the board, you will be surviving and forcing a double up into you. You can utilize this on a Follow Me spread as well instead of Swords Dance, because then, you know, you redirect, the E-Speed goes into you, and the follow-up attack also connects into the Ogerpon-Fire, and then you have a free slot or free turn to do whatever you want with your other slot, which once again, this is why Follow Me is broken. Anytime you can force your opponent to not play the game or not play the game that they want to play and have to respect the Follow Me, or you can redirect attacks and they can't hit the Pokemon that they want to hit, it is very good. And that's why I think Follow Me is one of the best moves in the game, even on Ogerpon in general. And you also just have a defensive typing for it too. But regardless, on this set, I am featuring, the Swords Dance, because if they want to switch into Incin, you get a Swords Dance up, well, good luck. Incin doesn't really hit you very hard, especially after you Terastallize, because, the knockoff, you can't knock off the mask, and you resist the Flare Blitz once you Terra, so you pretty much live that pretty handily, and then once you're at +1 or +2, you add a Terra on top of that, now you're +3 or +4, and all of a sudden you're doing crazy amounts of damage with Ivy Cudgel, and there's not a resist that really wants to be taking this, right? The Grassy Glide is nice, especially on teams where you have Rillaboom, because you're able to basically remove Urshifu immediately, even the Scarf variants, where, you have Ogerpon, you get grass up beside it at some point, whether you switch it in that turn, or there's no terrain control for your opponent, so you just get the grass up whenever you want. And you just basically go Terra, Grassy Glide, +1, Grassy Glide's killing Urshifu. Why not go for that, right? It feels pretty good. But like I said, that defensive bulk is for that Terra normal E-speed from the Dragonite. You will be surviving that. And then I kind of had the Grassy Terrain number as well at 176. You can live the E-speed more optimally, but 176, since you're running Grassy Glide, it's like you might as well have the optimal recovery from Grassy Terrain as well. So that's what the 176 is for, and then you match that with the living the E-speed, you hit that. And then I kind of just did a general dump over here. This is a lot slower than I would really want to go in the format right now. But I figured with Grassy Glide, maybe you have the priority to get away with that. However, like I said, that talking point that we're going to get to, it's the fact that you're just going to be faster than something, get the +1 with a Terra, and take them out with Ivy Cudgel is so, so good. The value of that is so high that it's very tough to justify taking away from that speed tier right now. I'm not saying it's a bad idea, which is why I have it here, because I think you're definitely able to utilize something like this as well. However, there is something to be said about just that immediate pressure that you get without needing to support. And I know I've mentioned it a lot, but I really do think there is something. I'm talking about all these adamant builds, but I do want to keep in mind that, yeah, being fast in this format right now is huge, and Ogerpon is allowed to be one of those faster pieces, especially because you just get the +1. You don't lose out on being jolly all that much. Adamant might be a little bit greedy right now. Regardless of that, though, like I said, 138 here is, I'm basically speed creeping the 137s, and 137 is the checkpoint for -1 max speed Flutter, -1 max speed Shenpao. That will allow you to outpace those, because when they're at -1, they sit at 136. And like I said, there's a lot of middling speeds in this format. So a lot of teams will build their pieces to sit at 137. So this would creep those 137 players and Pokemon, which once again, not like a outrageous stat, not like a stat that you're going to see commonly, right? There's no real Pokemon that hits 137 at max speed, but there are a lot of Pokemon that will sit there because they have, the Icy Wind control in this format. And because if you can creep those, well, all of a sudden you're still faster, and that's really, really important. So that's a decent spot to hit. I don't think it's a bad number to hit, but once again, I will just, one more time, speed is so good. The ability to just be faster and bonk something with an Ivy Cudgel, I will never complain about that. If I can get that off consistently, I will do that consistently. So like I said, these offensive spreads are very, very good, and they hit adamant calcs. However, there is something to be said about being faster. So just keep that in mind when you're running Ogerpon. As always, guys, if you're not sure what to do when you put the Ogerpon on the team, just take the basic 252, see if it fits, see if it feels good on the team, and then you can start exploring some of the other ones. Now, if you know you've used Ogerpon in the past, and you're not sure what I think the best Ogerpon in the format is, I do think it's this kind of bulky offensive one. Play around with the speed tier. There's definitely stuff to be said here. But overall, I am going to stop rambling about Ogerpon-Fire right now. If you guys do enjoy this type of video, please feel free to leave a like and subscribe. It really does help out the channel. Of course, I really do appreciate that. But with that, I am going to get out of here. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll catch you all in a future video.